Wonderful. So today I will be talking about meeting the transition needs of students with autism and intellectual disabilities. As they've mentioned, I've been teaching students with autism and intellectual disabilities for 12 years. Prior to that, I taught for 6 years at the secondary level in an alternative ed setting, reaching students with emotional and behavioral disabilities. Um, but my love is working with these students. Um, and helping them meet their goals, and providing meaningful participation to meet their goals. In my classroom, I use hands-on career exploration activities. Um, we also do some job shadowing throughout the school. Um, you're gonna have to excuse me, my internet is lagging. Hold on one moment. There we go. Why we need to do it? Well, by the looks of the poll, there are many educators and administrators in this webinar. The main thing is Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act. We're supposed to develop transition plans. Where do the students go once they leave our classrooms? Once they leave that secondary environment, where do they go after they reach the age of 21? We need to think about that. Um, so we think about that through post-secondary education goals. Are they going to go to a college or a trade school or vocational training? Are they going to go straight to employment? How do we prepare them for that? Um, employment, or ideally, we would love to see them in integrated, meaningful, competitive employment. That's our ultimate goal. How do we get there? How do we maximize the students' abilities? How do we do that? And lastly, of course, is daily living. Daily living is important regardless of whether a student is going to continue to reside with their family, which is what I see many times when I send out the transition surveys, because I teach students that are nonverbal and with intellectual disabilities. But we still need to prepare for them to be as independent as possible. And that's where daily living comes into play. Um, they don't necessarily need to go on to live in their own apartment to address daily living skills. Um, so these three things are important, and we're required to meet them by law. There have been other initiatives that emphasize this, as mentioned, like Employment First, Vocational Rehabilitation Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. Um, you can read more about that. You're more than welcome to receive copies of the slides to read more and to research more. Um, Um, so Employment First is basically where they really want to see these uh, individuals in competitive employment, regardless of disability. That's what they would like to see. That's where Employment First. Many states have adopted this. Other states are in the process of adopting this. I know in Pennsylvania, they're really hitting home with students being gainfully employed or working towards that with career exploration. Even students without disabilities need to have some type of portfolio about careers when they graduate. And I believe it starts early on in fourth grade um, in Pennsylvania. So this is important, and it's more and more emphasized across the states because they realize not all students are going to go to college. We need to push for other things. We need to decrease that dropout rate because not all students are going to go to or want to go to college, or maybe the career of their choice doesn't require a college education. Maybe they just need to go onto their trade school. Maybe they could just receive training. Um, but unfortunately, students with significant disabilities a lot of times are limited. Either they're not employed or they're limited to, people limit them to um, sheltered workshops with minimal pay or day services. instead of helping them reach their maximum potential. And this came to the attention of several, where there were some lawsuits that were brought forth. So one was Lane versus Brown, pertaining to that. And then there is another one. So anyways, implementations of the lawsuits was building the capacity necessary to offer a sufficient number of community-based employment options, realigning public funding streams and reimbursement rates structured to ensure that entities providing employment services are incentivized to focus on delivering integrated employment supports, and also ensuring that individuals do not have to enter a segregated program in order to receive training or supports that are intended to assist a person in obtaining competitive integrated employment. And here is the other court case, the US versus Rhode Island, which pertain to the same thing. So fast forward, all these things are in place. But guess what? Only 30, most people with intellectual disabilities remain unemployed or segregated in vocational workshops. Only 34% of individuals with intellectual disabilities between the ages of 21 to 64 work. 18% of people with intellectual disabilities participate in competitive employment. So what can we do to make it better? What can we do to increase those numbers? So does anybody have any questions or comments so far as we go through?
Oh, this is Allie. I'm back again. If anyone does have any questions throughout, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I know Nicole will be pausing like throughout, and I can collect those and bring those up if anyone has any.
So yeah, always feel free to ask questions. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability, or try to direct you in the right direction of answering them, because again, none of us are experts. We are all continuously learning, and that's why we are all in education, because we see the value to continue to learn as more practices are brought forth, as we have access to more things. Okay, so Taiwan, all right. And that's one thing. So I'm reading a question here. So some of the graduates that Taiwanda works with, that I apologize if I mispronunciated names, have stated that they do not make enough on the check they receive, and jobs do not pay them much either. So how do we help? And that's the thing. So one of the ways we can help, and we're going to get into that, is teaching skills where they can do different things. Where they can hopefully have competitive employment that pays enough to pay bills. And that's a complaint, I think, across the board for many workers right now. But one of the ways we can help is teaching skills, and we're going to get into that. Okay, so I'm going to continue here. We'll get into some ways we can help. I think a lot of it is developing those skills and taking, some students, once I love math. However, some students, once they get out of high school, when do they ever have to calculate the slope and y-intercept of a function? What's more important for some students, teaching them algebra 2 or teaching them how to measure and apply carpentry skills to maybe one day be gainfully employed as a carpenter, or how to complete auto body repair versus learning the learning quadratic functions. So anyways, though, as far as people with more significant disabilities here, there was a wonderful news clip that I watched. I just wanted to take a moment and share with you. We need to think of skills we could teach where they can go into the workplace. And I know some businesses have taken initiative in opening businesses to employ people with disabilities, either because of a child maybe having a disability. There's a restaurant near me called Puzzlers, where the parents, I believe, where the parents had children with disabilities and they opened a restaurant. Um, and there are other examples of that as well. All right, thank you so much. All right. Need to turn on the audio.
Because you employ more people with disabilities.
It's very encouraging to see that number start to tick down, and we'd like to think we're a very small part of helping that number come down, but there's such a long way to go. And I think that people with disabilities need to be reframed in society as real people who just happen to have intellectual and developmental disabilities, and they are deserving of the innovation that the business world can bring to bear on them. And once that's done, once you're able to reframe that as a business leader, the sky's the limit. It's just a function of finding a place for those folks in your organization and figuring out what they can do and what ways you can innovate around them so that you can be successful. And in fact, they will become a winning competitive advantage for your company in ways that you have no idea about in this very moment.
Ben, your background is in financial services before launching this company and working there full time. Is there something that you saw in your work that made you think that this coffee shop business and employing people with disabilities, it's a good mix? Why did you decide that this was the particular type of business that you wanted to start with this mission?
Well, it's an important question, and I think, you know, any business can take this model of employing at least one person with a disability in their organization. And what I saw is that when people spent time with our kids, Biddy and Bo, who have Down syndrome, it changed them, right? They saw them as real people, not just as, oh, there's a person with a disability. And when people have that opportunity to be in the midst of someone who does have a disability like that, it just changes everything about it. And I saw that when my clients came in and met with me, and if they got to meet my kids during the process, it was very, very powerful. So Amy just had the great idea in the shower one day that, hey, you know what, let's amplify this. Because I had a very small kind of boutique practice, and you know, my clients would only visit me face to face a couple of times a year. So it was great when it happened, but it wasn't enough. And the coffee shop is just a constant flow of people all the time, and it gives people that opportunity. Maybe just order, get your order, leave, or get your order and sit all day, or whatever, something in between. And it's critically important, and it's been a perfect venue to get our message across that people with disabilities are real people and that they do deserve the innovation that the business world can bring to bear on their lives and create all kinds of markets and demand for people that right now there just isn't.
And Amy, you know, you have been able to grow this business from your idea in the shower to creating several franchises, 19 shops around the country. Do you have advice for business owners on how to attract people with disabilities to work for their company? Because they can't ask about it directly. That's against the law. So how are you making sure that you're attracting people with disabilities?
Well, the good news is there is an enormous talent pool out there waiting to work. 1 in 5 people in our country has a disability. 80% of them are unemployed. So if your company wants to take the first step, make an initiative to include people with disabilities in your workforce, they're waiting. They want to join you. So I think the first step is having a conversation within your company about this matters to us. And not only will it make a difference for everybody who works for you, who knows someone with a disability, it sets an example for other businesses in your community too, that you prioritize that. So You know, interestingly, with one in five people having a disability in our country, if a company says this matters to us, I can guarantee you there are people that work in that company that have a brother, that have a sister, that have a child that would love a job, and that's a great starting point. Maybe reach out to them first.
Bear with me, Nicole, while I bring this back down.
Excuse me, would you mind taking a picture of us?
Oh, no problem.
Thanks.
Let's minimize it. So, we definitely, that's what we want to aim for, is that competitive, meaningful employment to showcase abilities. So that's what we want to do. And we need to, supported employment placements do not include facility-based work or sheltered workshops, group enclaves, mobile work crews, time-limited work experiences such as internships, or facility-based day programs. They call for individuals to receive sufficient services to support a normative 40-hour a week work week, with the expectation that individuals in targeted populations will average at least 20 hours per week in integrated jobs via supported employment supports and competitive wages. That's what we want to aim for. And allow people with disabilities to interact to the fullest extent possible with their peers, people without disabilities. And we can prepare them for that by focusing on their strengths and what they can do. Our obligation as educators is to prepare students for integrated employment, to develop transition plans with a focus on providing adequate transition services that will provide opportunities for students to explore real careers and receive instruction on skills needed to successfully participate in careers. Provide students with research-based instruction practices that are effective for students with cognitive disabilities. Focus on the individual's preferences and skills to target instruction on sub-skills that are necessary to perform specific tasks for different occupations. So effective employment skill instruction should include research-based practices. So a lot of these, I work in an ABA-based classroom, which is applied behavior analysis, because I work primarily with students with autism that are nonverbal. But these are research-based practices. There's lots of research behind. One is direct instruction, using forward and backward chaining to teach those steps with decreasing prompts. Repeated practice for sub-skills until independent mastery is accomplished. Collection of data. Data is very important. It shows that our students are growing. Social communication and behavioral activities. Hands-on instruction, differentiated instruction, opportunities to generalize skills across natural environments, and career exploration. These things are very important for students to learn, especially students in the populations that I teach, differentiated learners. So direct instruction, model, lead, test, retest. You model the task. You allow the student to participate with you while completing that task with prompting. Then you test, you have that student demonstrate that task, sometimes with some prompting, and then you give repeated practice until independence is accomplished. So in this picture here, the students were actually learning, they were participating in a grocery clerking unit where they were learning about all the particular jobs you would typically see in a grocery store, such as the person bagging the groceries, the cashier who also bags groceries, people that work in a produce department, stocking shelves, things of that nature, all the things in that career. So the students in this particular picture were learning how to buy groceries, where it went from food items versus non-food items, light items versus heavy items, why we shouldn't put 5-pound cans on top of a carton of eggs. Then it went to them bagging chemicals and things of that nature, cleaning products versus food items, etc. So we did this through the model, lead, test, retest, also forward and backward chaining, the numerous steps. So does anybody have any questions so far? All right. Just keep rolling. All right. So visual schedules also, while we're teaching, are important to because not all of our students are verbal, especially those of us that teach children with apraxia, which children with autism and intellectual disabilities can have. Also, students with IQs of 130 can also have apraxia. That's one of the common misconceptions. So visual schedules help those non-auditory learners visualize the steps to a skill using the forward chaining with task completion. Fortunately, they are present in some curriculums. I know the curriculum that I use has those visual schedules for each sub-skill that I am teaching to teach those skills. You can also pull different pictures and develop visual schedules using Boardmaker or Lesson Picks. But who has to? Okay, so I have a question here. Which curriculum are you using? I am actually presently using Project Discovery, which teaches job skills. It's based off of different careers, which goes from grocery clerking that I talked about before, all the way to small engine repair and auto body repair. And this all depends on your student's interest. So that's which one I'm using. It has the visual schedule in it and lots of other great things. So I'm going to continue going here. So another thing is the student is making progress on their goals. And as they're making progress in the curriculum, it is important to take that data as they're completing a particular job task. So on the screen here, I have a data sheet that uses forward and backward chaining analysis to keep track of data. So for example, it lists all the steps. This is handling cash in a retail store data sheet. So the first step is gather all materials. Did the student do that? Did they need full physical prompting from me? Or did they just need partial physical to do that? Or did they need visual or auditory or gestural, or were they able to do that independently? So I would use the first letter of those words to rate what level of prompting was needed. And I would go through each step of the task with the student, or have the student go through each step, and did they do it? Was it independent, or do they need any degree of prompting? And then at the end, I would then each one would have a point value on a rubric. So of course, 0 being full physical prompting, to a 6 if they were able to complete that task independently. And then all of those would be added, and they would I would do like an independence rate and graph it on a graph, because parents love visual to see progress. And plus it's good for us to see progress. And you could do a percentage of steps independent even versus prompted steps, where you can have a graph showing that, how the number of promptings should be decreasing, and we should see the number of independent steps increasing with each trial. And the beauty part of this particular data sheet, we can go through and we can have different trials on different days and compare data, and we can graph that data. Because instruction should be also data driven, and we should be making adjustments according to data. And some examples, like I mentioned, the first one was percentage graph you can use. These are easy to read. You can use them for parent conferences, IEP meetings, career portfolios, progress monitoring for transition plans, where it gives a nice visual for the parent to see. And it also shows that their child is increasing independence, because I've had parents with the students that I teach say, hey, there is no way my kid is doing that. Oh, yes, they are. And you could show that graph. I also take lots of pictures because my students are not able to write. So we could keep track of the actual job skills that they're doing. And it is amazing to see them grow. Does anybody have any questions? Comments thus far? So another thing that is used commonly, well, in my classroom, and is a verbal behavior training, because we want to increase those social skills. How many, I'm just curious, you could just reflect it in a chat and does anybody else in here use verbal behavior or VB map? So VB-MAP actually increases communication skills. It's research-based. It falls under that AB umbrella. It's widely used for, it's a social skills assessment program for children with autism or other intellectual disabilities. Verbal behavior programs provided are based off of individual assessment strengths and needs. So you may have, and you want to pick something to increase student communication, pick a modality, whether it's going to be sign language, or if a student can write, are they going to write on a whiteboard or a piece of notebook paper, or can they verbalize? That's what you need to think about when you're going to increase those communication skills. It's based off of different verbal operants. There's tact, listener response, manned, motor imitation, echoic, match to sample. Tacting is simply naming things like, hey, there's a hammer, or in listener responses, go get the hammer. Or manding, I need a hammer to hammer nails. You're requesting something with manding. Motor imitation, do this, where they're hammering, where they're imitating your movement with hammering, say if they're using a carpentry unit. Echoic, where they're repeating and learning. And then match to sample. Match to sample is maybe sorting nails, or in a retailing unit, maybe stocking shelves matching to the other cans of soup, or matching to these other articles of clothing that are very similar. That's where verbal operants come into play. Instruction is provided is based off of errorless teaching, which is prompt, transfer, distract, and check, where you're teaching with prompts. You're transferring to something they're a little more familiar with and they know and they're fluent in. And you do that again, and then you go back and check the skill. You use lots of positive reinforcement while you're teaching these skills. And of course, ideally, for those of you that follow ABA, off of a variable schedule. Skills are then generalized in a natural environment. So that's where work comes into play and career education comes into play to generalize skills. And career natural environment training programs created should teach names of items, maybe following directions, imitation, social skills. So for example, in the picture here, I have some things from my retailing unit. So the students can recognize the cash register drawer, find the $1 bill. There's listener response. What is it? They would sign 5 if it was a $5 bill or quarter or whatever. What is it? labeler. What is it? You know, just naming different things from that unit you can even get into. You know, them demonstrating the skills of using something. Do this using the ticketer, using the price threader. So the possibilities are endless with the verbal thing, and it also teaches social skills as well. Um, application of verbal operants, which I just talked about, you know, different applications. Introverbal is another one, them answering questions. Them manding or asking a fellow employee or peer in the workplace. All these come into play. Manding to a supervisor, hey, I need this to complete this task. I need this material to complete this task. You know, an introverbal, asking questions, answering questions. And it's a lot of information with all of that. That was just I compiled it very briefly. I actually went to boot camps and all kinds of things. I know Pennsylvania really emphasizes verbal behavior and VB-MAP for students with autism and other disabilities that limit communication. So you would have to reach out maybe to your state, you know, your training networks to see what's offered. So does anybody have any questions? I know that was a lot of information. All right. So I see one question, how much of a student's day is devoted to this? So my students actually have, it's rapid paced all day long. So basically for career exploration or education, we typically have at least 30 minutes solely divided to these new skills. Throughout the day, the students also are given opportunities to practice those skills through independent workstations in the classroom to practice the different skills necessary. So the verbal behavior also encompasses most of the day as well, but also it's cross-curricular, it goes into science, it goes into careers, it goes across the board, daily living, it's taught all day, in addition to this curriculum that's also that it correlates with. So yeah, it's used, you know, there's lots of things that are used throughout the day. But our emphasis is to increase communication as well as job skills and transition. So we do these things all day, every day. There are 2 students in my classroom that actually are working on other skills as well. Or they all are working on skills, but so but yeah, it's pretty much that careers is devoted to 30 minutes a day. So hands-on instruction is also important to give them opportunities to practice things. So over in the left, the picture that I have here, the students are assembling food trays where they are assembling, the student has a So another question, yes, we're going to discuss that towards the end of the slide. I see a question about the opportunity to practice these skills outside of my classroom. Yes, and we're going to get into that towards the end of it. So anyways, though, over here we have trays here, the students assembled. They were learning how to be a cafeteria worker or maybe a food service worker in a kitchen. So the student assembled trays based off of orders that are well balanced, representing all food groups, which is that nutrition piece. We had an open house. The students were actually serving people that were visiting my classroom during the open house this food from our food unit. So, you know, working on those social skills and things like that with people other than myself and my paraprofessionals. and their immediate peers. Over here, I had a student waiting tables. I sort of had two units going on at once, table service, and I also had the food service unit. A student took an order, gave it to another student working in the kitchen. That student fulfilled the order. The student doing the table service brought the order to the customer. So, you know, you can also cross units to apply different skills where it was like a functioning restaurant, except with the materials for this. The students also have the opportunity and have where they were assisting people in the cafeteria on a rotational basis with packing student meals. Another thing we did another job unit for cleaning and maintenance. That is also part of the project discovery curriculum. And the students then generalized those skills. They went to other classrooms in my building and offered other teachers, hey, is there anything you need taken care of in here? So a teacher may say, I need these boards washed, or I need this floor mopped, or wiping desks, where they are generalizing those skills. And this is also part, or cleaning windows, where they are generalizing these skills in other classrooms. And like I said, we've done this with the food service as well, where they're assisting in the cafeteria. There are different ways to generalize skills outside of those controlled trials. Some ideas include cleaning and maintenance across school environment to assist. They feel good about helping out another teacher. And the other teachers like that as well. Another thing is food service in the cafeteria, maybe assisting staff, with lunches, learning about food safety, meal clerking in the office or classroom, working in a greenhouse, cross-curricular, opportunities to observe skills being applied in the natural environment, grocery clerking in the local grocery store, retailing at the local mall or department store, table service at the local restaurant, animal care at a local pet store to observe those careers, food service in the school cafeteria, greenhouse, maybe visiting the local farm. Oh, okay. And here's some more pictures of kids generalizing skills. Here's some more here of kids generalizing skills. Here. So another cool thing that I have in my is I have an aquaponics tank. So the students presently are growing things in this aquaponics tank, which is over here. They are presently growing things via seed from scraps that I have in my kitchen to go into our next unit that we're going to start when we come back from spring break, which is taking care of a greenhouse, which is another career. Which I'm hoping we will be able to maybe take a CBI. We have a farm nearby, to take a field trip to that farm to see a real life greenhouse and how all the workers come together. So, and in this right-hand picture, I have a student, we grew cantaloupe seeds from a cantaloupe that we ate. The students also grew pepper seeds and cauliflower and broccoli all at the top of this aquaponics tank. The bottom is fish. The fish nourish the plants up top. The students take care of this with a little bit of guidance from me. So this is another thing. Lastly, part of transition is daily living skills. The goal is for students to live as independently as possible, even if staying with family or a group home. Exposure and opportunities to practice skills to maintain cleanliness and safety of a house or apartment, practicing meal preparation and food safety skills, personal hygiene, shopping, budgeting, and leisure activities. And here's some more daily living here. some examples here. I actually created a daily living lab with the assistance of Goodwill. The neighboring Goodwill donated some things, as well as one of my friends, where I was able to have like a bedroom where the students were able to practice making beds, folding clothes. I had mock living room. I also had the students washing clothes, like almost like they're living on their own, or as independently as possible. And here's some more examples of some independent living activities here. We have students washing dishes here, because my students cook once per week, and that also correlates with that food service thing to practice with real food and food safety. Students are working on measurement skills here. And these are just some sources. Does anybody have any questions?
And I think there's one more there in
So,
the chat.
size, yes, I'm
Yeah.
gonna open this up. So, okay, as you're exploring different skills, how are you able to continue the exploration effort and skill development for some of the areas not listed in one of the previous slides? Do you ever notice if a student is particularly interested in one area over another? What do you do with that? Um, so, I actually base the different units. I actually have the students vote before I start a new unit. And I asked them which unit they would rather learn about. So at the beginning of the year, we actually did the animal care unit because that beat out food and nutrition, which was our other unit this year. So I was like, which one would you like to do? And nutrition or animal care? And they picked animal care. I also use reading free interest inventories sometimes to get a baseline of general interest in my classroom well, it's part of my IEPs as to what the student would be interested in. However, students with limited listener response and vocabulary, sometimes those are not completely accurate with assessing what they like and what they do not like. So sometimes I present the kit, I open it up, I let them look in and explore the items before we go and pick the next unit. So lots of things in my classroom are student driven. And then once we start that particular unit, then it's broken down into those skills. And then if a student needs more practice with a particular skill or a sub skill within a skill, we give opportunities throughout the day for more practice. Because the ultimate goal with each unit is for the students to become as independent as possible. So hopefully one day they can have some type of meaningful, gainful employment.
And it's really part of this exposure, right?
Yeah.
So they may think they like the animal care unit until they have to clean out the kitty litter or whatever it might be that's not.
Oh, yes. And that's exactly it. Or I have a student, he had no interest in the aquaponics tank or plants initially. Now he loves taking care of the plants. He loves assisting with taking care of the fish that help nourish those plants that are going to go in our greenhouse next week. So, students never know, or they may decide they don't like the texture or the feel of that dirt in between their fingernails. They're like, that's not for me. There may be another student. I'm going to try and get to this unit, the skin and nail care unit. There may be another student, they may have said no way until they started applying those skills.
Right. Exactly.
So
And
it's all a part of career exploration, which they need to do.
We've got another question on how disabled individuals might be integrated into employment post high school. I think you've given some examples to that. And if I can go back also, there was one saying, is there a way to avoid roadblocks? Because I think it's all about how do you get students into placements in the community? Do you have any
So,
good
yeah,
story about that?
yeah, and I think like in our local communities, like forming partnerships. I know locally in Pittsburgh, we have Giant Eagles, and they are the largest employers of people with disabilities. And they are a huge company. That's a Western PA thing. Down south you may have Winn-Dixie or another part, or Publix, and other parts of the country. Here it's Giant Eagle. Here it's Giant Eagle. So um having those partnerships, sometimes people are really good at assembling things, you'll discover, even though they may be nonverbal, they may be very good at assembling things. So maybe a local partnership, with a factory. Sometimes if you teach people those skills through forward chaining and they reach independence, and a lot of it I think is partnerships with the community, and also changing attitudes, just focusing on someone's ability, not their physical appearance or a disability. You need to focus on their abilities and what they can do. And that's why I think it's very important to teach skills that they would need for different employment.
Absolutely. And one of our units in our Achieve Life Skills talks about creating a resume. And it's not necessarily your traditional kind of resume. It's more about, here are my interests and here are my skills and what I've had good success with, and just kind of outlining what's really most important, to put the best foot forward when you go on out to your community members.
Yeah.
Awesome, Nicole. We really can't thank you enough. Just so much information in there, and lots of different ways to unpack it. I'm going to be cognizant here of the time that we've got left, and want to show people where they can get some more information as well. There are plenty of things for you to explore on the educationassociates.com resources page. So you can see just 3 right here. There's a preview packet you can download. There's newsletters that you can apply for, and how to get in touch for more. And clicking on them really gets you to a lot of things that are very, very clear. So the interactive preview packet is great because it lets you share. Take a look at some of the audio and the video tools and things that are in there, and then lets you share it with your colleagues. That newsletter also really super helpful. It kind of does a digest of everything like that Nicole was talking about today, will be in the next month's newsletter. And so you can share that. I know a lot of administrators who will send that out to their staff as they go along. And then, as we were saying, there's more places where you can watch these webinar Wednesdays. There's plenty of them all around and about. Plenty of information of things that you can pick up there. And that includes information on things like funding, and really detailed information that will help you. And then finally, we're happy to help and provide more information for you. So you can reach out to us. We do Zoom personal tours, as well as those the recordings of the webinar Wednesdays. So we're more than happy to do so. Allie, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think you covered it. That was well done. And thank you, Nicole, so much. That was fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us today, because it's so incredible the work that you're doing in your classroom.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Our thanks to everybody who spent some part of their day here with us today. We hope it dries up and gets sunny, like around your area. And keep an eye on your inbox, because there will be an email with the recording and with some notes and other things that you would ask for. So thank you all very much, and have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for attending. All right. Take care. Stay dry.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Nicole, that was great.